Hello and welcome to Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, Elise, the Untitled Anarchist Seagull. And get started with a little bit of Geoguessr. Once I get these windows sorted out. Okay. Continue to play World. Okay, we got a motorway. Something tells me this isn't North America. It's something about these guardrails, but... Right-hand driving. Looks kind of sunny. Say probably a warm climate wherever it is. Okulta Shiti. Okay, we're in Turkey. It's a school bus. Okay. Someplace in Turkey. Ah, Turis. Something. Oh. Servis Tasumacılığı. Not actually sure. Okay. I don't know Turkish area codes. But it's definitely in Turkey. Let's see. That might be something. Türkiye Jockey Kulübü. Turkish Jockeys Club. Okay. That doesn't really help as much as I was thinking it was going to. There's gonna be a distance sign someplace. Let me just fix those. And need to clear off some space on my drive to record. There we go. as we continue looking for where in the hell in Turkey we are. I mean, this looks like a major motorway. Turkey is big enough that they've probably got quite a few of those. Oh, that looks like a distance sign coming up. Okay. Mustafa Kemal Pasha, Balıkesir, Izmir, 250 kilometers out of Izmir. Mustafa Kemal Pasha, Balıkesir. Okay. Kemal Pasha. Is Kemal Pasha the same as Mustafa Kemal Pasha? Let me see. If this point is... No, it can't be. It absolutely can't be, because if this is 12 kilometers out of Mustafa Kemal Pasha and 250 out of Izmir, then that can't be. Balıkesir, 80, 83. Ah, there we go. Mustafa Kemal Pasha. Karacabe. We're near Karacabe. .1 kilometers out. Not too bad. 49.70. Good start for the evening. Now we've got... Feels kind of Latin American. O capı se vende. Okay. That is Spanish. Hello to whoever just joined. Okay, we'll get some signs fairly soon. I mean, this could be a lot of places so far. Could be Chile, could be Argentina, could be Peru. A ver. Vivienda unifamiliare con piscina en parcela individual en la urbanización Roche. Ok. Estamos donde lo cuico. Calle Inglaterra. El puerto de Santa María. Okay, someplace coastal. Doesn't narrow it down too much, but it's a start. La urbanización Roche. Comunidad de propietario. Okay. So this is like, if there's a coup in whatever country this is where one of the places where they'll be cheering it on. Or if there's a like chance of a decent government coming to being in wherever this is where they will be voting against it. Comunidad de propietario. Nunca más un proletario. A ver, ¿qué más nos dice este lugar? Let's see what else we can find out. One thing we learned last night on stream, once again, Caleb Maupin is such an uninspiring speaker. When he gives a speech, it's like drone warfare. It's fucking Nazgul catechism. Well, come on, give me a stop sign or something. Actually, this makes me think maybe it's actually Spain. El chiclanero, comida casera. That is a very... I don't think I've seen that in Latin America before, but in Europe it's quite common. 3 lines to indicate that something is ending. With parth. Restaurante Marimonte. Okay, another indication that we're someplace coastal. La huerta de Conil. Ni idea. Me dice nada esta weá. Habrá que seguir buscando. Huevos y verdura. Eggs and vegetables. Foto privado de casa. Again, that kind of makes me think Spain. Yeah, Unión Europea. We're in Spain. Junta de Andalucía. Okay, no wonder I thought it was South America. It does kind of... Andalucía, it tends to be have a lot in common in terms of the style of the place. Okay, we're in Spain. See, the reason Casa for the hunting zone made me think Spain is that in Latin America, you're more likely to hear and see caceria, which is a better, easier to distinguish from casa for house, which isn't an issue that arises in Spain because for the most part, people will tecear. They'll say caza. Restaurante Marimonte Conil. Okay, so we're someplace coastal in Andalucía. Podría ser... Ah, bueno. Why is my mouse doing this to me? En Almadena. Vélez Málaga, Nerja, Muñecar, Botril, Verja, Adra, Almerimar. Okay, give me something more than this. I mean... Ay. Mantenimiento mecanizado de las infraestructuras contra incendio en la provincia de Cádiz. Estamos en la provincia de Cádiz. Okay. There we go. Cádiz. Puerto de Santa María. There we go. "32 kilometers off. Ah, Conil and Roche. Cabo Roche. Okay. Okay, someplace that uses Chinese characters. Ah, we're in Japan. Nishio Tariori Haikibutsu Hanji Kata Saishu Shobunjo. Ah, okay, we're by a landfill. Neat. Always wanted to see a Japanese landfill. Okay, so we're in Japan and there's industrial waste nearby. Yugengaisha Mori Shoten Nishijo Kojo. None of those things actually help me. Company I've never heard of. Okay, got a distance sign coming up. Also give us a road. Toyo. Shikoku Chuoshi. Mishima. Nihama. Okay. Katsushiro, Takachiho, Amakusa, Nagasakiと広島だっていう人がいた。新居浜、宮崎、日南、福島、南九州、薩摩。A place the oranges are named after. 南関、長洲、久留米。東洋湖。Okay. 東洋。薩摩仙台。ああ、九州じゃなく四国だ。松山、月八幡浜、室戸、南。四国中央市、三島。What prefecture is that? 島、藍住、東香川、高松、水戸よ。I mean, wherever it is. 西条、新居浜。あったー。6.6 kilometers, not too bad. 49.78. And this once again looks like it could be South America. Okay. That was not the way out. Productos de belleza, uñas de acrílico, tip estructural, gel semipermanente, Pharma Elite. Okay, once again, Spanish speaking, although definitely not Spain this time. Computadora. Papelería Fabi. Emnicado Wuhan. Tortilleria. Okay. We're in Taqueria. Okay, we are probably in. Yeah, we're in Mexico City. Thank you, Ciudad de México, por tener unos taxis tan. De color tan único. Y es mucho más fácil encontrar nuestra ubicación en Geoguessr. Okay, so we're someplace in Mexico City. Ooh, dried chilies. That sounds good to me. Okay, let's see if we can get more of a fix on this than that. que no puede comer solo una. Ah, que sí. AMLO. Escuela de Contabilidad y Administración Pública AC Leona Vicario. Okay. No street names though. No name of any neighborhoods either. Annoyingly. ¿Alcalde de qué? Tláhuac. Ok, Tláhuac. A ver. A ver si encontramos Tláhuac. Isla. Tlalnepantla de Vaz. Tacuba, Polanco. Bolívar de los Padres. La Joya. Heroico Colegio Militar. Tláhuac, Tláhuac. Well, ni uno. Okay, someplace around here maybe. 4.2 kilometers, 49.86, not too bad. Five of five. Abi. Could we be in Sweden? Bilprovningen. Prövningen. No, provningen. That will clear things up a little. Enköping. Okay. We're in Sweden. Göteborg, Trollhättan, Göteborg, Norrköping, Nyköping, Köping. Lots of Köping. Grims and in Norrörebro. It's 47, 3. Wherever this is on the 70. 50. Hello to whoever has just joined. We're trying to remember where Enköping is. Uh, 50. 70. There's the 70. That'll help. Rättvik. Röros. Una. Östnor. Okay, there. That'll do. And 722 meters. Not bad. Okay. 24,825 points. Nice. Okay. And with that, we're going to switch over to do a little bit of roasting. Let's see what we've got. Yesterday we were looking at the updated version of the Nazbol Catechism of Caleb Muppet, where he managed to get through the very end before actually saying some outright fast shit. I'm trying to decide if we want to listen to a debate on whether baristas are working class with the world's most insecure man, Has, from Infrared. Are we going to look at Xanderhol's continuing efforts to distance himself from far-right anti-LGBT hate troll Shoe on Head? or we want to look at Vosh demonstrating just how little he knows about Germany's situation with the far right. All sorts of options here. Hmm. Okay, let's get set up. Hmm. Okay, I've decided we are going to look at Bosch being very ignorant about how Germany actually deals with the far right. Figure watching the man whose entire personality is droning on and sounding authoritative about things he knows nothing about should be a good value for the evening. And it's a relatively short one, so maybe we'll end up doing two.
Germany arrests 25 accused of plotting coup. All right. So let's talk about the far right in Germany, okay? I'm gonna hit
Oh, let's hear this. I want to hear him try to talk about the far right in Germany.
you guys in a secret, okay? Germany has done a really, really, really good job for the most part with internal denazification.
Oh, yeah, no, that is just absolutely buck wild. Nobody who has actually spent any time looking into this, like German anti-fascists, will uh, absolutely laugh at this because the thing is, Germany funds the far right through their intelligence service. This is something. Okay, what you have to know is back in the early first 2 decades of this century, actually starting at the end of the last decade of the last century, there was a group that took form called the Nationalsozialistischer Untergrund, NSU. A network, they described themselves as a network of fascists with the motto of deeds instead of words. And under this motto, they carried out numerous bank robberies and murdered a whole bunch of largely uh, small business owners of Turkish and Greek descent and one cop. And they got away with it despite being completely and utterly surrounded by paid informants of the domestic intelligence services who all claim when this all came out, and the only reason it came out because nobody was even bothering to look at Nazis as a possible angle, despite the fact that they were specifically targeting people, with what they call a migration background in Germany. People of Turkish descent, people of Greek descent, people of Iranian, descent. Yeah, they were specifically targeting, and the cops didn't even look in that direction. That's not to say they didn't think to look in that direction. They thought to look in that direction. One of the things that came out during one of the many parliamentary inquiries that has gone on, trying to figure out how this could have happened, found that the cops actually did, in fact, the task force that was supposed to find out who did all this, did consider the possibility that fascists might have been doing it, but only in the sense that they of media policy, where they said they weren't supposed to even, where the policy was they wouldn't even mention fascists unless somebody in the media brought it up, and the media didn't bring it up. And instead, the cops spent the entire time finding ways to criminalize the victims, coming up with this complete buckwild fucking theory about, hello Phoenix, I've just gotten started, about a supposed Turkish mafia that all the victims were members of, except that they supposedly didn't even know they were members of it, and it couldn't possibly be people of German descent, the cops said, because killing was taboo in German culture. I mean, being Jewish, I know exactly how taboo it is. Um, yeah. So, and the thing is, in the course of all of this, it was also revealed just the full extent to which the German government, through the cops, through the domestic intelligence service, Verfassungsschutz at the state and federal level, were making it possible for Nazis to do their thing completely undisturbed, like tipping them off when the cops had search warrants against them so they could hide contraband, um, giving them large amounts of money, giving them access to all sorts of fucking equipment and things like that. And the thing is, the way, I mean, and this isn't something that is unique to fascists, but the way their scene operates, the people who become the leaders in the scene are whoever has, some money and some time and is able to actually organize stuff. I mean, that shouldn't be unfamiliar to us. And the thing is, whoever was on the payroll of these intelligence services, of the German cops, either already was the leaders of these groups, or they became it because the intelligence services made it possible for them to be full-time Nazis and not have to worry about getting another job. So, yeah, and in some parts of Germany, there were fascist groups, the branches of them opened up that could never have opened up except that the German Federal Intelligence Service, the Domestic Intelligence Service, Verfassungsschutz, they actually funded the foundation of these branch offices. So to say that internal denazification in Germany was successful, that's not even getting into the actual historical denazification, which did not survive the reestablishment of an independent West German government. The minute that West Germany actually got to have their own government, got to have their own constitution in 1949, all of the major political parties, except for the Social Democrats and the Communists, who were soon after banned and still are, immediately set out to reverse denazification. They carried out a massive renazification of all the key areas of German life. So the judiciary ended up being full of Nazis, the prosecutors' offices all over the country, all over West Germany, full of Nazis, the police, also, the intelligence services, also. The only kind of denazification that happened is if somebody was, prominent enough that people would recognize their name abroad, they couldn't have any kind of a prominent role. But that was it. If you were sort of a behind-the-scenes Nazi, it didn't matter how many fucking people you murdered, you could actually continue to have basically your old job. And in fact, in a lot of areas of life, particularly in the legal system, it basically became a requirement for people who, if you wanted to actually get hired into a civil service job in the legal system, you had to be a former member of the Nazi Party. They didn't say this explicitly, that would be a bit mask off. But the law actually specifically said that priority was to be given to people who had held these positions between 1933 and 1945, which would only have been members of the Nazi Party. So, there's a whole excellent book on this that, as far as I know, has never been translated into English, called Furchtbare Juristen by Ingo Müller, that just shows the level of continuity, particularly in the legal system, between the right-wing judges of the Kaiserreich and the Weimar period to Nazi Germany to immediately thereafter. So the idea that Germany has had some kind of successful denazification, and it is just absolutely laughable. I mean, the cops, the reason the Nazis are able to get away with shit is that the cops, they're extremely well networked with the cops. Like, there's a case right now. Um, okay, so there had been, over several years, attacks in a part of Berlin called Neukölln, full of migrants, full of refugees, also lots of leftists and lots of Jews, by German standards. And, fascists were attacking it quite regularly. And the cops said they couldn't do anything about it. They didn't have the resources. At the same time, they would send hundreds of fucking armed officers in to evict a leftist squad or something like that. But anyway, so finally they catch somebody for this. And there's a witness who's supposed to give evidence. And this witness, she goes off to, I don't know, she goes on a trip. I'm not sure why she was doing it, to a part of Germany about 100, 200 kilometers northeast of Berlin. In Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is the name of the state, and it's also just full of Nazis. And there, she gets stopped by a cop, who turns out to be the brother of the defendant in the case she's supposed to give evidence in, who stops her, knows who she is, and strongly suggests that maybe she should reconsider whether she remembered everything that she'd told the cops she remembered. And this is the wonderful, amazing denazification Vosh here is telling us about. This is what he's fucking telling us about. Let's hear about this more, Vosh. Let's hear you talk about what a great job of denazification they do in Germany.
Like, in terms of its laws and its culture, Germans are just not, for the most part, an effort has been made.
There are entire fucking states in Germany where people of color will not regularly say they won't even travel through because Nazis control them so much. Sachsen, for example, Saxony in southeast Germany, is a place where I regularly hear, like, anyone who is, like, visibly queer or visibly not white, you regularly hear people say, I will make a fucking wide berth just around the entire state, won't even travel through it because it's simply not safe, because it's full of Nazis and the cops are cool with them, and nobody even pretends that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, so they've made an effort. Fuck you, Vosh.
There is a big exception to this, though, and that would be in exactly the kinds of groups that you think would be more disposed towards Nazism. Namely...
Wait, so the exception to the denazification is specifically the groups who you would expect to be fascists? So they're great at denazification except for when it comes to Nazis? How's that work?
The police... and to the military. There have been so many stories of...
okay. Credit where credit is due. He's right here. The cops and I mean, like, to the extent that the major elite unit, like the German version of the fucking Delta Force, ended up turning out to be just basically an armory for neo-Nazi paramilitary networks. So he's saying they did a great job of denazification, except in exactly the sort of places that you would absolutely need to denazify.
Of, like, far-right militia groups filled up with veterans or police members. I remember when I covered
the intelligence services,
the Halo fundraising stream, there were people saying that there were consistent problems with guns going missing from armories with police and military units. And then they would, like, be found later at far-right, like, militia groups. So
it's what a absolutely remarkably great job of denazification, huh, Vosh?
Basically, like, there are people in the military feeding weaponry to like militia groups.
And not only that, the head of the Federal Domestic Intelligence Service, the guy who was the head for quite a while, a guy named Hans-Georg Maaßen, who was on whose watch the whole NSU thing happened, where supposedly all these hundreds of informants who were within the direct social circle of these Nazis who were going around murdering people, and nobody claimed to know what was going on. He started giving some speeches, basically just outright saying that, the Nazis had a point and they were actually okay people. And then shortly after he resigns and joins a law firm, becomes a partner at a law firm that has a lot of top Nazis as their like main clients. It's a basically a Nazi scene law firm. I mean, but yeah, wonderful denazification job. Go on.
Now, obviously, you would think the vast majority of these militias would be like Nazi ones, right? And they are. But the funny thing is, the group that got arrested, the Reichsbürger movement, is technically not. They're a German monarchist group.
No, they're not, you doofus. Okay, the Reichsbürger. I talked about this a little bit last night. How you doing, by the way? Hey, Phoenix. Okay, see, there you may have heard of sovereign citizens or freemen on the land. See, this idea that this far right conspiracy thing that also is a huge fucking grift, because of course it is. Of course it's a fucking grift. It's the far right. They work the grift into everything they do. Where there's this idea that the legal system has cheat codes, and if you know all sorts of really arcane phrases, then you can completely excuse yourself from all legal obligations. And the thing is, they have different names in different places because they're making this bullshit up about different legal systems. So in the U.S., they're called the sovereign citizens, although they've also called themselves the freemen. In Canada, Ireland, and Britain, they're mostly called the freemen on the land. And in Germany, the version is Reichsbürger. And they claim the Federal Republic of Germany is actually just a company, and that legally, oh yeah, of course he knows nothing about. He knows nothing about anything. His whole thing is that he doesn't know stuff. He's the not knowing things guy. He's the guy you go to when you want some ignorance. I mean, you want some ignorance delivered with a slightly more professionalism than Xanderhole. Okay, so they say that legally, actually, the Kaiserreich, the Second German Empire, is still in force, and that therefore they can take no note. They don't have to take any notice of the laws of the Federal Republic, the cops, taxes, any of that stuff. But basically, I mean, it's just fash. It's just a different. It's fash with extra steps. There are all sorts of different kinds of fash. I mean, and so claiming that there's anything fundamentally different. This whole actually saying you're into the Kaiserreich rather than Hitler is a very common alibi in the Nazi scene there, because you're not allowed to show any symbols of the Third Reich. You're not allowed to do that. You can't actually show outright Nazi stuff. So they'll say they're actually into the Kaiser, and they'll show the flag, the flag of the Kaiserreich, the red, white, and black flag, and all that stuff. This is like a standard maneuver that they do.
A group of far-right and ex-military figures are said to have prepared for a Day X to storm the Reichstag Parliament building and seize power.
Day X is actually, this is something that they got out of the Turner Diaries. Actually, I mean, that's their word for Day of the Rope. The Turner Diaries are very central to like strategic thought amongst Nazis in Europe. It comes from the fact that they were the diaries got translated in like the 1990s, and largely it seems through U.S. military bases. The soldiers made contact with the local fascists, told them about the Turner Diary, said, "Here, read this," and it became the big thing. So I mean, it was a sort of a cultural revolution within the fash scene in like the 90s as a result of all this.
A man named as Heinrich the 13th from an old aristocratic family by old they mean the 13th century, by the way, is alleged to have been central to their plans. He's one of two alleged ringleaders. The plotters are said to have included members of the extremist Reichsbürger, citizens of the Reich movement, which have long been in the sights of German police over violent attacks and racism and anti Semitic conspiracy theories. They refuse to recognize the modern German state. Apparently,
Yeah, I mean, and in the sights of the police is kind of cute because actually the police have been more or less letting them do their stuff. In fact, one of the big scandals in the past few years is that the cops got caught making huge numbers of completely illegal, unauthorized database queries to their like national database where they have all the information of basically everybody in the country. You know, if you want to find somebody's address, contact information, any kind of background stuff, this is where you'd go. And there are rules in place about when you're allowed to access it and look somebody up. You can't just go, just querying it every day. So they got caught querying it very extensively without any kind of authorization. And in the course of this, it turned out that various lawyers for the victims of the NSU murder gang, the Nazi network that committed 10 murders that we know of between about 1999 and 2011, they had received letters, anonymous letters, just signed NSU 2.0. And it turned out, around the time they received these anonymous letters and anonymous faxes from NSU 2.0, their information had been queried illegally in the police national database. So yeah, I mean, when you say that these fascist groups are in the sights of the cops, that's kind of a neat way of putting it.
apparently this specific group wanted to basically they were Kaiserists. Yeah, they wanted to bring the Kaiser back and they wanted to reestablish like pre-World War I German borders or something. Like we're like they were truly like phenomenal. Yeah, very 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 much like Hearts of Iron 4 tier brain rot here.
But mostly it's they don't want to pay taxes, they don't want to pay like water, gas, and utility rates, and they just set up these compounds and they claim it's just completely out of the jurisdiction of the government. That's the main thing they do, and then they use that in order to just kind of do fast shit.
Here. Monarchists supported Nazis? Oh, of course they did. Of course the monarchists supported Nazis. But these guys go back further. I mean, like they
No, they don't go back actually further. This is a post-war thing. In fact, Reichsbürger are very recent. I don't think that, I think it's been in the past 10 years that they started showing up. Because they literally are just a German knockoff of the sovereign citizens.
it's not just the Nazi group. Like they want to go ideologically prior to that point, which is very, very, very funny. Yeah, people have compared them to like German sovereign citizens. Like they
That's literally what they are. It isn't a comparison. All they did was plagiarize the sovereign citizens thing and put a new name on it. They made some adaptations. That's how recent they are as well. I mean, nobody talked about Reichsbürger until like I'm pretty sure it was after 2010.
they don't recognize the modern state. You know, they want to like appeal to some kind of like legal magic that pulls us back in time to a point they want.
Yeah, this is literally what they do. It is the exact thing they do.
Invariably a bad point. Just truly wacky stuff.
Oh yeah, it's wacky.
Bosch, careful, many Reichsbürger are genuine Nazis who want the German Reich. Well, yeah, they're
Yeah, they are. I mean, okay, somebody in chat is actually calling them
called
out.
the Reichsbürger. I'm just saying, God, they are Nazis. I'm just saying that it goes even beyond. Okay, it's Nazis 2.0. Reestablish the pre-World War I borders here. Hold on. An estimated 50 men and women. Oh, they let women in. That's progressive. Are said
That's not actually all that unusual. There are plenty of women in the German Nazi scene, always have been.
to have been part of the group which allegedly plotted to overthrow the Republic and replace it with a new state modeled on the Germany of 1871, an empire called the Second Reich. See, remember? Germany did the Third Reich, so it's the Second Reich. We don't yet have a name for this group, said a spokeswoman for the federal prosecutor's office.
And when they say 50, the way that this generally works, when one of these groups actually manages to get exposed, or generally to expose themselves, the way the German cops and the German prosecutors and the German government respond is always to find a way to totally minimize the size of it, to find some way to just not possibly look beyond the people who have already just clearly, undeniably been revealed as associated with them.
The Interior Ministry said it was apparently made up of an organization council and a military arm. Wednesday's dawn raids are being described as one of the biggest anti-extremist operations in modern German history. 3,000 officers took part in 150 operations in 11 of Germany's 16 states, with 2 people arrested in Austria and Italy. They went international with this. Very impressive.
Yeah, again, that's not also particularly surprising either. I mean, fascists are extremely well networked. I mean, if you I imagine, chat, you probably aren't all that surprised to hear this, but I mean, if you actually kind of look at the periphery of any just given fash figure, it's in the U.S. you can pretty quickly connect them to, within like 1 or 2 degrees of separation, to fash in Germany, to fash in the Czech Republic, Russia, you name it. I mean, they are very internationally networked. For nationalists, they're extremely international. And the reason that that somehow manages to work for them is, again, a British US thing that was adopted in like the 80s and 90s. Because previously it was all very much about nation. And the result of that was there were sort of limits to how you could actually work together internationally as fascists. But then the Nazis in the U.S. and in Britain came up with the idea of race over nation. So it was all just, so if you were white by their standards, you were okay. Which meant that they could all work together on the basis of just white supremacism. It was a major, strategic shift. It gave them much more leeway ideologically to work together across borders, and the result is they're extremely well networked. Ja, also, gute Frage. Nur so aus Neugier, gibt's irgendwas, das Wosch sagt, dass du damit einverstanden bist? Is there anything you agree with that he says? There are a couple of things in this thing that he's gotten right. Es gibt ja ein paar Dinge, die er durchaus richtig, so durchaus richtig gesagt hat. Also da hat er durchaus mit Recht. Und zwar, aber die Gesamtanalyse, wobei es mir gewissermaßen wehtut, ihm so etwas wie eine Analyse zuzuschreiben, denn auf dem Niveau bewegt er sich noch lange nicht, wo es irgendwie gründlich schief geht, wo er sagt zum Beispiel, die Entnazifizierung in Deutschland war ja prima, bis auf Militär, Polizei und Nachrichtendienste. Das ist ja wirklich eine prima Entnazifizierung, die sich nicht auf Polizei, Militär und Nachrichtendienste erstreckt. Das ist ja wirklich prima. So eine Entnazifizierung. Yeah, I mean, but occasionally he does get a fact right, just mostly because he's reading it from somebody else who got it right. But mostly he's just completely full of shit and he doesn't know anything, and that's his whole thing, is that he's more or less cultivated a following of people who are impressed by that.
Almost half of the arrests took place in the southern states of Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria. More than 1 in 5 Reichsbürger thought to be based in the southwestern state of Baden.
Yeah, and Baden-Württemberg is actually, like, in West Germany, one of the main points for fascist organizing. And not coincidentally, one of the places where it has been much harder to get any kind of proper investigation of what the NSU was doing on their territory, on the territory of the state of Baden-Württemberg, because they were actually quite heavily present there. And they had a lot of contacts in Heilbronn, in Stuttgart, in all over the state. They spent time there, other than the one time where they shot a cop there. And yet, I mean, like, the parliamentary inquiry at the state level there was just an absolute joke. The government did everything they could, the state government, I mean, did everything they could to make sure that no real questions could be asked. I mean, there was all sorts of shit. I mean, that was easily one of the strangest cases of one of the NSU murders. All sorts of bizarre things happened there, and none of, including the fact that the victims immediate supervisors in their police unit. These were two cops, remember? And an elite police unit were both fash and were about 2 degrees of separation around away from the NSU. I mean, all sorts of just shit like that. So hearing Württemberg, that is completely unsurprising.
Either in Württemberg alone, so on and so forth. Planning a violent coup, wacky guys allegedly plan to abduct Health Minister Karl Lauterbach while creating civil war conditions. A former far-right AfD member of the lower house of parliament, the Bundestag, is suspected of being part of the plot. Read the description.
Yeah, I mean...
Of what? Of what? AfD? I read that. It's always the South, isn't it?
No, it isn't always. It's actually mostly the East, although... I mean, Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg do have a little bit of history there.
Always. Read Who Are the Weichsberger? Wait. Can we read that? Oh, here. This? Yeah.
But he's going to go over this again.
So-called citizens of the Reich reject Germany's modern democracy and refuse to pay taxes. Once seen as harmless cranks, big mistake, they are very active and pose a high level of danger.
Okay, BFV there is Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz. That is the Federal Domestic Intelligence Agency. It's kind of like MI5, and they are largely responsible for allowing the Nazi scene in Germany to get as well networked as it is and as well funded. Huge amounts of money pass from the federal government to these Nazi groups through the Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz, the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution.
Says BFV intelligence chief Thomas Haldenwang. Last year, they numbered some 21,000, but they've since grown significantly. 10% are thought to be violent, and anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories are widespread. I would say all of them are violent, then, actually. How could they possibly imagine they could pull this off? Well, a proximity to reality is not really a con attribute of Reich supremacists. They
Well, I mean, one of the things about this, whole Day X oriented strategy that comes very much from the Turner Diaries is that it actually created a situation where fascists essentially more or less subordinated themselves to the cops to an interesting degree, where all they were doing, their whole strategy was that if they just go around attacking people that the cops also don't like, that this will create the Civil War conditions, Day X, Day of the Rope, whatever they call it, in order that they would have this, National Socialist Revolution or whatever the fuck. And of course, that's complete nonsense. Strategic, that doesn't make any sense. And it's very convenient if you're from the point of view of, say, the cops, if the Nazis are basically just sort of a deniable auxiliary who are killing people that the cops actually kind of don't mind killing.
Yeah, they tend to be a little wacky. Makes me wonder how much that shit's happening here. Oh, plenty. There are plenty of far-right militias in Germany and America. The only real difference between them, I suppose, is that the ones in Germany probably have a more direct connection to Nazism as a political movement, whereas the far-right militias here in America are more like sort of Nazi adjacent, like QAnon types or...
You see, I mean, actually, they're much closer, specifically because the neo-Nazis in Germany really adopted, a lot of the US-UK fascist perspective through things like Screwdriver and Combat 18 and the Turner Diaries and all that shit. I mean, so there's a lot of ideological kinship. I would say the biggest difference really is access to guns. there's just way more access to guns over here for obvious reasons. I mean, over there they have to go through, a few extra steps to get them. Over here it's extremely easy.
Sovereign citizens, where their politics typically align, but they're not specifically idealizing Hitler, except for those who do specifically idealize Hitler, of which I'm sure there are quite a few. They were made up of active and former members of the military, officials believe, and included ex-elite soldiers from special units. The aim of the military arm was to eliminate democratic bodies at the local level, prosecutors said. Rüdiger von P is suspected of trying to recruit police officers in northern Germany and of having an eye on army barracks, too.
Which, I mean, that is an entirely realistic approach because there are plenty of. I mean, the cops actually are kind of okay with this sort of thing.
Based in the states of Hesse, Baden-Württemberg, and Bavaria were all inspected for possible use after the government was overthrown. Good luck with that. The Reichsbürger movement is estimated to have as many 21,000 followers, of whom around 5% are considered
Wait, this article manages to contradict itself because a second ago it had given 21,000 followers as the number from a few years ago and said it was believed to be considerably larger now. Of whom 5% are considered to belong to the extreme. It's literally a far right movement. It's literally an extreme right movement. 5%, it's 100%.
belong to the extreme right. Okay, quick question. How can any group of people that belong to a movement that want to establish the 1871 German order, they should all be extreme right? What possible...
Okay, yeah, you would ask Norm, and yeah, okay. I do give that one to him. I don't give him a lot, because he doesn't deserve to be given a lot. He's completely full of shit, but he's not wrong there.
What is a moderate Reichsbürger member? Like, what was... like the moderate far-right monarchist? Yeah, I don't know about that one. Yeah, it feels pretty wacky, in my humble opinion. Where is that? Hold on. I feel like this actually ties into something else that I was looking at recently. You know, we went over that recent attack on the power station that was done in, I think, North Carolina.
And that is not the only such attack on power stations in the US. That's just the one that got the most publicity.
Where there was a drag show and there were some far-right terrorists who shot up the power station as a way of taking power away from the town. But where's that? I feel like as long as we're talking about insurrectionary efforts, this is as good of a time as any to talk about this. At least 4 electric substations in the region have been attacked, at least 2 by people with firearms since late November, emails obtained by OPB and KUOW Public Radio Show. This is in the...
yeah, in the Pacific Northwest, which is another place where FASH are extremely concentrated
Pacific
in the
Northwest,
US.
which is, a place where I live, which is a bit concerning. The electrical grid has been physically attacked at least 6 times in Oregon and Western Washington since mid-November, causing growing alarm for law enforcement as well as utilities responsible for parts of the region's critical infrastructure. So, the again, we're sort of like ascribing intent a little bit here, but it has been said by people who know more about this than myself that if there ever was some kind of big uprising from far-right militias, one of the first things they would do would be to target local substations as a way of cutting power in rural and urban areas, therefore essentially putting them in the dark, after which they can conduct assassinations with relative impunity.
Well, there's also, I mean, one of the very central ideas of fascist strategic thinking since like the 1990s, and this is true in Germany, this is true in the US, and in Britain, is that by doing sort of random attacks like this, or at least apparently random things, relatively small scale things where they can go in, do it, and get the hell out, and probably won't get caught, and because it doesn't take a lot of time or a lot of sophistication, is supposed to create chaos. And through that chaos, they will be able to take over, is their idea. This is incidentally where the thinking around like fucking mass shootings and things like that also comes from.
It's obviously a lot more difficult to fully take out power in a major city because there are multiple substations and backups and, the ways of keeping things together. But substations are very, very vulnerable soft targets. And, obviously this far right coup attempt in Germany wasn't going to, wasn't going to succeed. But if it was to take place, that is probably one of the ways they would go about it.
I mean, it wasn't going to succeed because it doesn't really need to. I mean, they have all of these myths around exactly what they're about and how what they intend. The sort of coming National Socialist Revolution, or whatever the fuck. But really, what it comes down to is they're acting like the UVF did in Ireland and the UDA. They're sort of just deniable state auxiliaries who target people the state is okay with targeting, and the state is kind of okay with them doing it. And the more realistic among them know that and actually work directly with the state. And in fact, it is worth noting that being a paid snitch in the fash scene in Germany is actually not something that gets you kicked out. It is actually that actual. I mean, even if it's known that you're on the payroll, they're kind of okay with that because it's considered that, first of all, they expect that there's going to be somebody on the payroll because the view is, and they're not exactly wrong about this, that the organizations that the authorities are really concerned about are the ones they don't have eyes into, is the first thing. And plus, these, the people who are on the payroll are the ones who are bringing the money in. If somebody wants to start a fucking fascist record label or something like that, it's people on the payroll who make that happen. If you're going to do some sort of a big rally over there, it's somebody who's on the payroll who is doing the funding, getting the permits, all that stuff, all the organizing around it, because that takes time, as anyone who's tried to organize anything knows. And if you've got to work a job at the same time, it's actually kind of difficult. It's much easier if you can just do it full time. And being on the security services payroll in Germany is how people are able to dedicate themselves. Basically the security services in Germany are like Nazi Patreon.
DHS warns right-wing extremists could attack power grid. Oh yeah, they are pretty easy to attack. Was it ever confirmed the shooting at the power station had any connection to the drag show? I don't know if they found those responsible. It's pretty difficult to do that. Florida was hit too. It's happening a lot lately. A little bit concerning. Report shows intrusions at Duke Energy power stations in Tampa Bay, elsewhere in Florida. The sheriff of the first station was revealed to be an open white nationalist.
Oh well, there's a shock.
Saw in that the public briefing in North Carolina, that one. Tens of thousands still in the dark after targeted attacks. Moore County Sheriff Ronnie Fields says deputies have determined. Emily Rainey photo of sheriff mid North Carolina outage raises questions. Photos of a North Carolina sheriff with Emily Rainey, a Jan 6 protester, has surfaced on social media after he said deputies had determined her posts about mass power outages in the state were false. So Emily Rainey, that the Jan 6 protester and the person who initially drew the link between the power outages after the transformers were shot and the drag show, the sheriff rushed to say that her post was false, but apparently they knew each other.
That's the, yeah. It's not fundamentally different from one place to the other. Somehow, cops and fascists tend to get on pretty well.
Ooh. Look at this. These people are penetration testers breaking into our substation super easy. I mean, you can't really protect a substation, right? A lot of that shit is open air. You just shoot at it. It's not... Why is it possible to shoot a substation to death? Well, because you can't really not. I think the only way to prevent that from being possible would be to build literally everything underground or in bunkers or something. And you'd have to do all the lines underground too. And that would massively...
No, I mean, you could put it under guard, but I mean, there's so many fucking substations.
Increase the cost of maintenance and construction and stuff. No, underground power lines are good, but they're definitely like an expense.
Underground power lines, it's so ridiculous that we don't have them here. This is something that people get. I get the piss taken out of me in Europe for. Yeah, because I talk about how when we have storms, sometimes the power goes out, and it's like, the power goes out. What? What is are your lines still over the ground? We haven't had that since the 60s. Or, I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it's like, it would make so much more fucking sense. Especially in areas like this. I mean, Ohio is a pretty high tornado kind of area. I mean, Indiana, this area is a place that gets all sorts of exciting wind conditions fairly regularly. It is kind of ridiculous that this stuff is not underground. It's just yet another example of the wonderful infrastructure we have in this country.
You know, I don't know. Yeah, build a wall around it. I mean, I guess you could build a wall around it. Couldn't you just put anti-ballistic armor over the crucial parts? You've seen a power station, right? Just kind of climb the wall and shoot, I think. I mean, yeah, you've seen what these look like, right? I think power substations are typically built in the open air for construction and maintenance purposes, right?
I mean, they are surrounded by fences, but they're. I mean, the ones I've seen around here, they're not really near anything. If you, probably it would be pretty easy to attack it without any witnesses.
Right? Like, if anything goes wrong, you want to have stuff to be you want stuff to be open air so it's easy to look at, to repair, to address. In terms of like what the vulnerable parts are, well, a lot of it is, you know. I don't know. I'm sure some can be done, but you know, only so much, I think. The air is part of the system. It cools the lines. Yeah, yeah, true. You need the air to help dissipate heat. I don't understand what purpose does the far right have knocking out power.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if he manages
Civil
this.
instability. They
Yeah.
can carry out assassinations without cameras being active.
It isn't quite that specific. It really does come down to creating an air of chaos and terror. They think that if they can just sort of create a sense that the shit could go down any minute, that will in itself allow them to bring about day X or the day of the rope or whatever they decide to call it. Different groups have different names for it.
That kind of stuff. Most people don't have.
I mean, they do assassinations without shooting the power down. I mean, they didn't like when the fucker attacked Club Q. They didn't do it fucking. They didn't do a substation first. He just went in. That's just kind of. They don't need the power to be off to go around murdering people. They just kind of do
Some
that.
backup generators to power their security cameras and the like. Also makes it real difficult for the police to, you know, get their work done. Most critical buildings like police stations and stuff are going to have their own backup power, but you know, it makes it that much more difficult to call them. If local lines are down, it can be really difficult to contact. Are locals doing it, or people out of town? People out of town. Overwhelmingly, when stuff like this happens, it's people in rural areas and far right militias who move in on other areas to do that. Oh yeah,
Well, I mean, in the Pacific Northwest, that would surprise me because a lot of the Fash there are actually from not necessarily rural, not rural, but suburban areas. So, basically ranging between Northern California and Portland, Vancouver, that area.
Jesus Christ, this is what he looks like. North Carolina sheriff rules out right-wing activist as suspect in power outage after praying with her. Okay, so he's actively like friends with the girl who went on social media and said, yeah, the power got taken out.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this is the same kind of fantastic denazification they've got in Germany.
Because of drag queens or whatever. Don't know if I trust them. Not to be rude, but why does he look like that? Phrenology, which is real and true. They are probably locals too. There's a far right training camp very close by too. Oh, dope. Something that's being looked at more county incident. Rainey is an 84 brag army captain. She was at the 4th Psychological Operations Group. Also, I'm out of this headline shit. Yeah. All right, well, listen, the moral of this story
It's a great
is that
picture of him.
Germans are funny. Hito hordy hoyo. That's their little German noises. Herpen
That's
derpen.
that's Swedish. That's the
What,
Swedish
Swiss?
chef. That's
I
a
don't know.
different
We
country.
can't actually make fun of them too much. They're QAnon influenced apparently, which means that this is an American export again. As is always the case, America has a hand in the development of pretty much all fascist movements abroad. So we yeah. Oh yeah, somebody linked.
Which is kind of cute, and it would be for that he acknowledges this, and it would be really kind of interesting if maybe he would consider how that impacts his fanboy attitude towards fucking NATO, which has been a major exporter of fascism.
This. Hold on. Thread, I see many of those don't live in Germany are not aware of the Reichsbürger far-right movement, as its members were arrested today for the alleged preparation of a coup. The Reichsbürger believes that the modern German state, the Federal Republic of Germany, is a fake. They believe that it is not a state but a private company.
This is also what sovereign citizens believe here. They have a version of this, and the freemen on the land in Britain and Commonwealth countries also believe that.
They have many explanations for that, but I don't want to go into details. Important is that as they think Germany is a private company founded in 1949 by the Allies, no state power.
This guy's with the Heinrich Böll Stiftung, which means, if I remember correctly, let me just make sure that I'm remembering this. Yeah, it wanted to make sure I remembered it correctly. Yeah, the Heinrich Böll Stiftung that this guy's affiliated with is a foundation think tank associated with the German Greens.
Comes from it. Man, really is sovereign citizen stuff. No taxes, no police, no laws, nothing. The real German state for them is the German Reich, which they believe still exists legally but without institutions. So they form these provisional institutions. They even institute Reich passports and try to travel with them abroad, form governments, parliaments, etc. as provisional institutions, and dream about the restoration of the real Reich. You would say these people are crazy, but they're pretty numerous and active. The German intelligence service BFV names them regularly in its annual report as one of the biggest threats to German.
Which is to say, the BFV, the Verfassungsschutz, are almost certainly providing some funding and protecting them from police raids and things.
Democracy, the BFV even has a separate page on them. What's important, many members of the Reichsbürger are former policemen, army officers, or other state servants. I've not read any explanation for that. My bold guess is that this conspiracy theory is very German and how legalistic it is.
Well, there, of course, a Green would not have an explanation for that. There have been explanations for why it is that fascist groups attract cops and, cop-adjacent professions. It's not actually all that hard to work out, but you just have to have a critical view of the institution of the police in the first place in order to begin to understand it.
For example, it explains the fake status of the German state with the help of a resolution from the UN General Assembly, with articles of the German Basic Law, how the process of how the German Basic Law was adopted. It is legalistic diarrhea and very German. So it's not a surprise those who used to work within the German state and love the law labyrinth catch this bait because it is their passion. Yeah, they seem bad.
Bis
Do they not realize countries are social constructs? They're
Ich
crazy.
mache bald Schluss. In etwa 6 Minuten. Yeah, okay. Not the worst thing we've seen from Bush. He managed to be much less full of shit than he usually is. I think mostly because he was actually looking at a source that wasn't too bad, and apparently people had actually talked to him about this before. But the idea that Germany's like some sort of model of denazification, which I've heard ever since like 2016, is just so wild. I mean, if you spend any time looking at the NSU, you look at the history of all of the Verfassungsschutz and the police institutions and the continuity between the prosecutors and cops and judges in Nazi Germany and the first 20 years of the Federal Republic. I mean, you would be amazed to hear that there was any kind of denazification that happened at all. I mean, and on top of all this, it's worth noting that the people who profited, the richest people in Germany, this will not shock anyone, I don't think, are all people whose families profited heavily from what were called Aryanizations, where the Nazis took property away from Jews who actually had some. Most Jews didn't. and just handed it over to politically connected people. And they never had to give any of this shit back. Like, I mean, that's Porsche, that's the people who own Kaufhof. I mean, basically all the big names in German industry, are people who profited massively from so-called Aryanizations and have never had to give anything back. So yeah, that's German denazification right there. I mean, I still the title I'm mystified by. I mean, he said that in the title, Germany knows how to handle a far right coup better than America does. I mean, Germany hasn't really done anything fundamentally different from how the U.S. actually responded to January 6th. I mean, they arrested some people, and largely they're not going to be charged with anything particularly serious, most likely. And there's going to be, and I mean, that's what's happened so far. And likely what we're going to see is a strong push from the authorities not to take the investigation beyond what they've already dug up. Just as we've seen with January 6th, where that fucking January 6th committee, the one thing that could have been useful that they could have done would have been to shine a light on all the connections between the cops, the law enforcement all over the U.S., and the January 6th rioters. And not only that, the Capitol Police and the DC Metro PD's role in making it possible for them to gain access to the Capitol in the first place, which was a massive departure from the normal way that the DC Metro PD handle protests. Usually they do a mass arrest. Phoenix, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new. A mass arrest before anyone gets anywhere near the Capitol. But somehow they didn't do that this time, and then the head of the DC Metro Police just laughably told somebody, and I think in the media shortly thereafter, "Oh, we at the DC Metro PD don't do mass arrests." And it's like, yeah, fuck you, you don't. But they just completely avoided talking about that, and it's the exact same playbook, because the minute you start pulling on the string on any of these major fash scandals that have happened, it doesn't take too long before you start unraveling bits of the security services and the cops and the ruling class. And the ruling class really doesn't like it when you do that, so that tends to not happen. There tends to be a lot of resistance when you try to do that, and that's what's happened in Germany, and that's basically what we've seen here as well. And with that, we are coming up on 1 a.m. It is time for me to turn back into a seagull. Have a good night. Thank you, Phoenix. Thank you, Norm. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and lurking. Hope you had a good time. Hope you and I hope you show up to see you again on Friday and Saturday this next week at the same time, 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. I will also be streaming for Hyperpolyglotting, my language-related stream with the 36 language Duolingo speedrun, at about 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Sunday. That's technically today. I hope to see you then too. Have a good night.